I think that is what allows someone who's reading this material maybe and not familiar with it at all to be able to understand it in an organized way. I put it in context of history, and I've explained in the thesis what that took to do. If you take a symbol out of its context, out of the culture it was used in, it's hard to know what it meant and what its connection was with that culture. So the historic context and sequence and continuity was very necessary. And what was the other part? Did I answer everything that you needed, or?
You have. You've talked about the strengths and the weaknesses,
okay.
Which is what I want you to do. Perhaps I could take you a little bit further.
Okay.
In that, it is a very, very broad thesis. It's
yes.
a very historically very, very broad. So could you talk a little bit about what the criteria for selection of what you call symbols in your study? What were your criteria of selection for those symbols?
That's a very good question, and it was very difficult to make the decision as to which symbols to put in. I'm trying to think back how I did select them. Well, one major criteria would be that I had enough information historically as far as geology, culture, climate, and things like that, and an unbroken chain, for example, with the RX symbol. That was an easy one to do because there were examples that were spread through history evenly. And the same with the Lascaux Star of David. It was easy to present that because there were examples evenly throughout history, and we could pull them out and use them. The cross is the same. The other criteria was in how much information or what it said to me about the culture that used it, so that the amount of information I could decode from it was another criteria. For example, the Green Man. The Green Man says a lot about its culture, and it extends also forward, and it's a very proliferous symbol now. Familiarity with the image by our contemporary culture was also important, because it's one thing if I can decode something somebody's never seen, but to take an image that we are familiar with and say, look how old this is. Look where it's been, look at the changes it has been through, and who used it as far back as we can trace it. That was really exciting, because then there's something to actually to connect with our culture, and I think that was important also. I can't think of anything else.
Okay. In that sort of context, a similar sort of area now, can you talk a little bit about how difficult it is really to compare symbols both cross-culturally and from differing historical periods? Can you see any difficulties there, and what were the problems that you encountered in making those comparisons?
That was difficult. I think the most difficult thing to decode the symbols and be confident in the results, and not guesswork, not based on what other people have written about it, which I also took into consideration as well.